Good afternoon, welcome. We do have some more seats. I know you're welcome to stand, but we have some seats and we also have some seats over here to the side. We've been doing this for 10 years since our Veterans Memorial was built. And November isn't always the best time of year. I'll never forget that first Veterans Day, November of 2012. It was, well, if you remember what yesterday looked like, it was 75 degrees and sunny. I hate to move it indoors from that beautiful war Veterans Memorial that we have, but I do think that this is also a fitting backdrop to thank our veterans, to honor our veterans for their service to our nation. And today and every day is a fitting day to do that. We'll now begin the ceremony, and I would ask, if you're physically able to do so, to please rise for the presentation of the flag. Color guard, post colors.
Detail, post, colors. Detail, present, arms.
Please join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Last year I introduced my good friend Jimmie Highsmith at this ceremony. I thanked him for his service, but I also thanked him for speaking at the Brighton High School Veterans Day Assembly, where he was able to speak with the students at Brighton High School about his service. Jimmie's a good friend and a musician, and we're very, very pleased, and a veteran, and a proud Desert Storm veteran. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Jimmie Highsmith, who will perform America the Beautiful for us. Jimmie? Jimmie. Thank you, Jimmie Highsmith. Thank you for your service. Thank you for sharing your talent with us today. Please join me now in a moment of silence to honor the memory of the brave men and women, the heroes from Brighton and from the greater Rochester area who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation. God bless each and every one of these brave Americans and their families. Thank you. We have a number of community leaders and officials joining us today. Some of them will be speaking in a moment. Jimmie, again, thank you so much. But I do want to introduce, and if I've missed anybody, please wave your hand. We have Monroe County Clerk Jamie Romeo with us today. Thank you, Jamie. A couple of our officials will be speaking in a moment, so I'm not going to introduce them right away. We have town judges, Judge Karen Morris and Judge John Falk. We have town board members Jason DePonzio, Chris Werner, and Robin Wilt. We also have County Legislator Howard Mafucci. As I mentioned, we are going to hear in a moment from Congressman Joe Morelli. We're going to hear from County Executive Adam Bello, and we're going to hear from Assembly Member Sarah Clark. I also want to introduce former Town Supervisor Sandy Frankel. Laura Stradley from the Veterans Outreach Center. Thank you so much, Laura, for all that you do. I also want to acknowledge and thank all of the members of the Kaufman Post of the Jewish War Veterans that are with us today. As you probably know, the Kaufman Post was in such a large part responsible for that magnificent Brighton Veterans Memorial that we have out in Buckland Park. And next year the sun will be shining and we'll be there. I also want to thank Kit Vogel, who is with us every year, and honor our love, the memory of former Councilman Jim Vogel, who chaired the committee that created and built that Veterans Memorial. Jim, of course, was a colonel in the United States Marine Corps and the United States Marine Corps Reserve. Also here with us, is former council member Ray Tierney. Thank you, Ray. And thank you to our police color guard today. Much appreciated. In honoring our veterans, we must always also honor and thank the families of our veterans. Not only did they frequently endure long periods of separation from their loved ones, but so often they stand side by side with their loved ones after they return to civilian life, giving service to their communities and to other service members and veterans. I am humbled by your commitment to our nation and your commitment to stand beside the veterans in your life to join them in continued service to this community. We're a better nation because of the service of the men and women in uniform, and we're a better community because of the service of those men and women who come back and put on civilian clothes and serve their community upon their return home. Now I want to recognize my good friend, Congressman Joe Morelli. Thank you, Joe, for all you do to support health and education for veterans and for your work on the Armed Services Committee of the House of Representatives. Congressman Joe Morelli.
Good afternoon. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I'm grateful to Bill for making calling the audible, as we say in football, and moving us indoors. As much as I love to see the Veterans Memorial, and I too want to thank my friend Kit Vogel, and always think of Colonel Vogel, as I always called him, for his extraordinary service. But to all of you veterans, I was thinking this morning, and we were at the War Memorial, and I said that in some ways, democracy has this calendar. One of the most important, if not the most important day in the calendar for democracy is Election Day. It's really fitting that we're here just a few days after an election day, because the commitment of veterans that now goes back over 2.5 centuries is really what preserves that ability for Americans to cast ballots in a free and fair election all across America. In tens of thousands of polling places they went. But none of that would have been possible without the blood, sweat, tears of veterans who have served, the men and women who serve around the globe and serve to this moment. And you look around the world, and it's particularly important to remember this commitment when you look at what goes on in places around the world like Ukraine, where they're fighting every single day with such enormous courage to be able to self-govern, to be able to restore their democracy. Or you look and see what happens in China, where you have essentially a dictatorship, and the dictator chooses all the members of the government who will play a role. And the public has no input into that. You look at places around the world where people would literally do almost anything for the right that Americans have to freely go to their polling place and cast in their privacy and within their own conscience, just make decisions about who they want to represent and who they want to lead them. None of that would have been possible, it continues to be possible, without the extraordinary sacrifice of our veterans. So to all of you who have served, continue to serve, our greatest thanks to all of you. For those who didn't come back and paid the last full measure of devotion to this country, we honor them. And to those who came back, oftentimes bearing the scars of battle, both seen and unseen. And I want to just take a moment too, because we have an extraordinary obligation to those who serve to make sure when they come back that we care for them and their families in the way that they cared for us. And I do want to acknowledge the county executive and the Veterans Agency, Nick Stavanovich, and my friend Laura Stradley and Veterans Outreach Center. We work hard, all of us together, throughout the course of the year to make sure that we address issues like burn pit and exposure to toxic substances. Millions of Americans will now have an easier time getting benefits they deserve, or dealing with the huge epidemic of veteran suicide and the work that we're doing, or just this past month, standing with the county executive and Laura and Nick, the county using American Rescue Plan dollars to add dramatically to the number of transitional housing that will be available at the Veterans Outreach Center. So those commitments we'll continue to honor, and I think often of my dad, who served in Korea, and all of you who served at various places around the world or served here in the United States. None of this would be possible. The American way of life, our leadership in the world, would not be possible without all of you. So thanks for the opportunity to say a few words, and God bless our veterans, and God bless the United States of America.
State Senator Jeremy Cooney is actually out of town today. He sends his regrets that he could not be here, and his gratitude and respect for all of the veterans in this community. But I do want to recognize our New York State Assembly member, Sarah Clark. Sarah worked tirelessly on veterans issues when she worked for United States Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and she continues to work for our veterans in her position in the New York State Assembly. Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me and for letting me say a few words. I will say the move inside, the one benefit was the acoustics, because that was quite the rendition there, and I think we all got to really enjoy it with this tight space. So thank you for having me. You know, also a daughter of a Vietnam vet, a niece of many Vietnam vets, a cousin to many veterans, in-laws, most of my in-laws as well. So this day has special meaning to me. Brighton does an amazing job every year of really both honoring the sacrifice that is made by our armed services, the families that support them, but also honoring the wonderfulness of all our veterans who come back to our community and make it a richer and a better place. So I just love getting to be a part of it. It is so meaningful that it is after Election Day and so close in time, because that is the ultimate moment we all get to feel what that sacrifice is for and why it is important for us to honor that sacrifice by going out and voting and exercising our right to do that. We are so lucky to live in the democracy that we do, that we have some of the safest and fairest elections in the world, and so I just sit here and reflect on that as we get to all join together, and I look forward to hearing from everyone else and honoring the great work that our Veterans Service Agency does. This year in the state session, we elevated the Division of Veteran Services to the Department of Veteran Services, giving a better umbrella to all the services the state provides, especially increasing around mental health and the things that we're doing. I know Rochester is a leader on all of these things. Monroe County is a leader on all of these things. So we will continue to do whatever we can at the state level. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Sarah. The work that the state does, I know, is invaluable to our veterans. Now I'd like to invite County Executive Adam Bello and Monroe County Director of Veterans Services, Nick Stefanovich, to join me here at the podium. Those of you that have attended, and I know most of you have, attended our Veterans Day and/or our Memorial Day ceremonies in the past have heard Nick's powerful words and insights about his own experiences in uniform and about the challenges that veterans all too often face as they return to civilian life. While I do like to remind people that the same men and women who put on the uniform of our country to serve the nation, to keep our freedoms, come home, transition home, and put on civilian clothes of service and do so much for our communities. But for many of those veterans, that transition is not easy. Under the leadership of County Executive Bello and Director Nick Stefanovich, Monroe County Veterans Services is there, along with many other agencies, to help veterans in Monroe County make that transition, join back in the civilian world in a healthy way, and we're grateful for that. We thank them. We don't have, really, we thank all of our veterans, but the work that you both do, the work that Monroe County Veterans Services does to say thank you in a very tangible way, 365 days of the year, is special and it's vital. I will now read the Town of Brighton's Veterans Day proclamation recognizing the work of Monroe County Veterans Services on behalf of the town board and the town of Brighton. And then I'll invite both Nick and Adam to speak about Veterans Day and their work for our veterans. But first, let me read this proclamation. Whereas the United States Congress officially recognized the end of World War I in 1926, noting that November 11, 1918 marked the end of, and I quote, the most destructive, sanguinary, and far-reaching war in human annals, close quote, and reminded us that, quote, this day should be commemorated with thanksgiving and prayer and exercises designed to perpetuate peace through goodwill and mutual understanding among nations. And whereas each Veterans Day, we continue the tradition of honoring, celebrating, and expressing our heartfelt appreciation to those men and women who have served in our nation's armed forces, especially those who have given the ultimate sacrifice, so that we may enjoy the rights and freedoms of democracy. But whereas supporting our veterans as they resume civilian life is a crucial task, as the impact of service on veterans' lives can be great, and getting the care and benefits they need can all too often be a struggle. But whereas the Monroe County Veterans Services Agency advocates for veterans and helps them receive care by ensuring that they're aware of and gain access to all the resources available to them. Whereas this support is especially critical, as 22% of veterans suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and or major depression, causing many to experience isolation and loneliness, making re-entry to their home life and their community extraordinarily difficult in many cases. And whereas mindful that we are still entrenched in conflicts with other nations and fighting terroristic threats, we know that the important work of the Monroe County Veterans Services Agency must and will continue. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Brighton Town Supervisor William Maley, on behalf of the entire Brighton Town Board, do hereby recognize November 11, 2022 as Veterans Day in the town of Brighton. We ask that each of us support our veterans and personally commit to honoring and learning from our veterans so that enduring peace may one day be ours. This proclamation is signed this 11th day of November, 2022. Nick and Adam, I'm proud to present it to you, and I invite you, Nick, to join, say a few words.
Thank you, Bill. The microphones are good this year. Bill is the only person in my life who I've spoken after where I have to lower the microphone usually. I'm going to say just a couple things and then introduce the county executive. I spoke a little bit this morning. As I walked out of the my voting booth on Tuesday, I always have a memory when I walk out of that booth. I was in Afghanistan in 2003 when they held their first democratic elections in decades. And the Taliban ran as a party in that election. And they did everything that they possibly could to interfere with that election. And our job was to patrol the polling sites to make sure that they stayed out and away from them. And I watched the people as they came in to vote, and it was a mix of joy and fear. You could see them looking around out of the corners of their eyes to who was watching them because they were still living in fear. A lot of people I hear say, you know, other countries may not want our type of government or democracy, but in my experience, the only people who don't want free and fair elections are dictators themselves. The people in other parts of the world are no different than we are when it comes to wanting freedom and the ability to elect their own leaders. And I actually have a ballot from that election that I have framed at my house. And then I just want to say, on the other side of that, my job, you know, it's an honor to do what I do. I've been doing it. I'm going into my 6th year at the county. But one of the themes that the county executive talks a lot about is action. What we can do for our veterans more than saying thank you, which is an important thing. But I love seeing leaders, and not all of them do, but I love seeing leaders who act on behalf of our veterans because that's what's important, and this room is full of them. everyone from my friend Vic Valque, who has donated God knows how much money and time to veteran organizations, including the Veterans Outreach Center, to Congressman Morelli, who's I work with almost every day, his office, to pass laws that have a real impact on removing the obstacles that stand in our way to get us back to service, and Sarah, of course. But there's one person who I am especially thankful to, and it always seems like it's not always veterans themselves that do the most for veterans. I'll tell you, I was yesterday, Adam unveiled his budget, was yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I'm planning a parade tomorrow, so. And this is my second budget with him, and he'll talk more, I'm sure, about actions that we're doing, but the meaning behind veterans sitting in a room and seeing an executive name veteran issues in a budget means everything to us. It's not just somebody saying thank you and being on their way. It's somebody saying we're going to put our money where our mouth is. We talk about veterans issues all the time like they're very important, but what are we doing about them? And I don't have words to say how proud I am to serve in the county executive's administration on his team to do this work. And so I'll introduce County Executive Van Bello.
Thank you, Nick, and good afternoon. It's wonderful to be with all of you here today. I'll start here. Nick is right. I mean, not about me, but about him. So let's talk about Nick for a second. And the work that people do. A lot of times, we come together at events like this and we talk about how great our community is, our veterans are, great how people who've sacrificed so much. And we talk about how do we repay that debt of gratitude that we owe them. And we repay that debt through our actions, not through our words. And one of the most remarkable things that I see around this community, whether it's Laura Stradley at the Veterans Outreach Center, Nick Stefanovich, who heads up our Veterans Service Agency, is also reflected, the work that they do is also reflected amongst the veterans who call this community home, the greater veteran community, and that their service didn't stop when they came back home. Our veterans gave so much, and this is why I love this community. They gave so much sacrifice to themselves personally, so much sacrifice to their families. And then when they come back home, that sacrifice doesn't stop. They come back to the community and they serve as police officers, they serve as firefighters, they serve as teachers. They come back into public service to continue that mission of making this place the greatest place you can make it to call home. And they're driven by that single desire that we try to instill, I think, in all our young people as parents, we try to instill in our children, is how do we leave this world just a little bit better than we found it? And there's no greater example of how we do that than our veteran community. Nick Stefanovich and the Veterans Service Agency put that into action. And just the last year alone, Nick and his team, working with our partners like Congressman Morelli and the VA, have secured over $6 million in benefits that are past due to our veteran community. And in just the last several years, over $30 million have come back to our veteran community in benefits they earned because of veterans themselves who are still back here fighting for the men and women who they served with overseas. As Nick and the town supervisor said, our veterans come back, a lot of them experience PTSD. And what Nick was referring to in our budget yesterday is that we just doubled our funding for the Tri-Ecotherapy program that helps veterans who are coming back home who are suffering from PTSD to be able to recover and work through their feelings and work through that trauma that they experienced overseas, it has a 70% reduction in PTSD symptoms for people who go through this program. And so the point behind all of that is to say, if you're a veteran or you have a family member who's a veteran who's struggling, you need to reach out to us, because this is how we are repaying our debt to those who served our country, is through these actions. And the Veterans Service Agency, Nick, Laura Stradley, the team at the Veterans Outreach Center, they're here to help you, and we want to help you. Final thought is this. You know, we live in sometimes a crazy world, face a lot of challenges, and I'm a parent. I have an 11-year-old and a 3-year-old, or 13, wow. 3. Whew. I don't know if that's good or bad. No, 11 and 13-year-old who are at home. And you're trying to teach these kids, you think about that age, they're a very vulnerable age, right? They're out there, they're trying to learn how to be, like, right, get to that sort of next level. And we're, as parents, we're trying to teach our kids how to succeed, right? And we're trying to look for role models, inspiration, and try to, like, teach them how to be like good adults, right? And get back to that, how do you leave the world better? So as you're looking on TV and you see this crazy, the conflict that exists in our society, there is that one shining star that you could point them to, and it's our veterans. It's because they put service above self. They put their country, their community, they put their service to make this world a better place above their own personal needs and their family needs. And I think that is how we inspire that next generation of young people, that next generation of future leaders to be successful. And that's how we're going to make sure this country remains the best country in the world for generations to come. So thank you again. I want to thank all our veterans for all of their service. Jimmie, I got to tell you, one of the favorite parts of my job is I get to meet some of the most remarkable people and see the most remarkable talent in this community. That, though, was stunning. So I want to thank you for that performance. You know a performance, a musical performance was brilliant when it makes you feel something. And Jimmie, I don't think anybody in this room wasn't feeling what you were giving us, so thank you for that. And I encourage everyone, please join us tomorrow, 10:30, over at Gary Bykirk Memorial Park for Monroe County's first ever Veterans Day Parade, as an opportunity to thank and pay honor to all our veterans sacrificed in this community. Tomorrow morning, 10:30, I will promise you the weather will be much better than this. So, thank you. God bless.
I can't get the microphone back, but absolutely, please, please, please do.
Hi, my name is Mariella Pernicelli. I'm Michael Pernicelli's aunt. My brother John Pernicelli could not be here today. Sunday morning, about 3 a.m., he was rushed into emergency surgery. He's doing a little bit better, but I ask all of you, please. He means a lot to me. He's a great guy and everything. And he's all I got, and my mom too, and everything. And my cousin's husband is a volunteer fireman, Jay Jeffries, and he heard the call go over the fire radio. And then my cousin called me, and I was so shocked and everything. So I really appreciate if you would please keep John in your prayers and thoughts. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. We will do that. And of course, Michael's ultimate sacrifice is something that will live in all of our hearts forever. We pray We pray for John's speedy recovery, and thank you for those words. I do want to mention Amy Malloy is with us from the Rochester City School Board. Thank you, Amy. I also want to thank a number of our staff who are here and who helped make today possible. Always Bridget Monroe, my assistant. You can't see her tucked in the back, and Mary Jo Lanfear likes to stay in the background. But our town historian, one of her missions is to keep the history of our veterans in this community, and we thank you for that, Mary Jo. Matt Beeman, our Parks Director. We would really be in the muck if we were out in your park today, Matt, but thank you for your work in helping get us ready to go. Miriam Moore is with us, our Chief Diversity Officer. Thank you, Miriam. And finally, our Facilities Director, Gary Donofrio. When we took the handoff from Matt's Parkside to move this into this building, Gary and his folks were very important in getting the room set up. Thank you also to the Police Color Guard, to all of the members of our police department, many of whom are veterans, and all of whom serve this community with the same honor and courage that all of our veterans do. So thank you, Captain Jose Caraballo and all of us. Again, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Adam. Every day we do well to thank our veterans, but as they both so cogently reminded us, every day we should strive to find additional ways that we can do something more, that we can make this world, this community, a better place, to thank in a very tangible way those veterans. Laura, the work you do. Nick, the work you do. And so many are Kaufman Post members. All of our veterans gave their very best. We owe them nothing less today and every day. I welcome everybody to stay. We do have refreshments over here, but thank you for joining us, and have a very safe and healthy day. I'll ask the color guard to retrieve the colors, please. Please rise.
Right. Face. Detail. Retrieve. Colors. Left. Face. Left. 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 Right. Left. 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 Right. Left. Left.
Again, thank you all very much for coming.